Holy moly, guys. We're already on chapter 75, but it's called The Ricos. Uh oh. I think they're after her. Three robots zipped down from the airship on cables. The ground shook as their heavy feet slammed against the cobblestones. Then stood side by side, forming a wall with their eyes locked on Roz. They were Rico 4, Rico 5, and Rico 6. Hello, Razum Unit 7134. We are the Ricos. Please come with us. The robotic voice belonged to Rico number 4. He and his partners waited for their target to come forward, but Roz didn't move. She knew how dangerous the Ricos could be, and so did her son. From somewhere in the sky, Bright Bill's frightened voice cried out, "Run, Mama, run!" So Roz ran. She dashed up the pathway and leaped into the woods. Without crunching a weed, without rustling a leaf, the robot vanished in the thick foliage. The Ricos were concerned. They had no other way of tracking her, or so they thought. Their blocky heads swiveled from side to side, scanning the woods for Roz's electronic signal. They scanned and scanned and scanned, but they found no trace of their target. Thanks to Jaya and Jad, right? September. Chapter 76, The Morning. A steady stream of foot traffic was flowing past the park that morning. Several pairs of eyes noticed a Razum robot running out from the trees. They watched as she looked around and then started marching along the sidewalk with the rest of the crowd. Roz had lost the Ricos back in the woods, but she knew they wouldn't stop searching for her. She needed to blend in with the normal robots on the street. So when she came upon a work crew marching toward a construction site, she tried to join the end of the line. But the crew immediately halted and turned to face her. Our robot stepped backward away from the crew and bumped into a young woman. "I am sorry," said Roz, gently grasping the woman's shoulders. "Get your hands off me. Whose robot is this? There's something wrong with her." Everyone stopped and stared. Humans pointed. Automobiles slowed. There were whispers about a defective robot on the loose. And then the white triangular airship appeared. It floated out from between tall buildings and headed for our robot. Roz lurched forward and backward again and again, trying to think of a plan, until a voice suddenly squawked behind her. "Follow us, Mama!" Bright Bill and Strutter swooped past, and the robot went racing after them. She wove through the crowd, sprinted down streets, leaped across intersections. Horns blared and humans screamed, and robots shuffled out of the way. The birds made one last turn and fluttered into a narrow side street. A group of tomcats were there, lurking in the shadows. They crouched and licked their lips and dreamed of feasting on the goose and the pigeon. Then the robot came stomping up, and the cats hissed and scattered in every direction. Strutter pointed to a heavy circular panel set in the pavement and said, "Lift that up." Roz lifted the panel. Beneath it was a ladder that descended into a deep, dark hole. "Climb down there," said Strutter. "A friend of mine is expecting you." The robot looked from the pigeon to the goose. "Do what she says, Ma," said Bright Bill. "There's no time to waste." "But how will I find you?" said Roz. "Just go." So it looks like they're going down into a sewer hole. Or she is. They can't fly down there. Chapter 77, The Underground. Our robot was standing in a long, shadowy tunnel. Murky water trickled along the floor, and sour smells filled the air. Roz was below ground in the city sewers. There was a squeak, and the robot's headlights flashed out a crack in the wall. A rat's pointy face poked out. "You must be Roz." The rat wriggled his nose. "I hear you're in trouble." "That is correct," said the robot. "I need to get as far from here as possible." "I know where to take you," said the rat, and he started scampering down the tunnel. The rat knew the sewers better than anyone, but his short legs couldn't carry him very fast, so Roz carried him. She scooped him up, plopped him on her shoulder, and said, "Tell me where to run." With the rat squeaking directions in her ear, Roz stomped deep into the underground. She splashed down side tunnels, crawled through narrow passageways, carefully crossed subway tracks. Occasionally, they came upon cavernous chambers. I mean, it's really big, right? Like a cavern. Most of the chambers were empty, but some contained jumbles of pipes. The rat would scurry across the damp, dirty floor while the robot climbed the pipes as if they were trees. Mechanical sounds echoed out from some of the tunnels. Robot crews were hard at work. They spent their lives laboring below the city. Many would never even see the light of day. Roz was curious, of course, but she dared not spy on them. Those workers had no idea that a fellow robot was sneaking through their underground home. After traveling through miles of tunnels, the rat and robot came to a dead end. A ladder was bolted to the wall and disappeared in a hole in the ceiling. I don't I don't know what you'll find up there, squeaked the rat, but good luck. It cannot be any worse than where I was, said Roz, placing him on the ground. Thank you for your help. The robot gave the rat a quick scratch behind the ears, and then she climbed up to the street. Chapter 78 is called The Chase. The street was empty. No people walking, no robots working, no automobiles driving. Roz looked to the sky, hoping to see Brightbill or Strutter. What she saw, though, was a fleet of white triangular ships. They were floating above the city, searching for the runaway robot, and they had just spotted her. Razum Unit 7134, do not move. 3 robots zipped down from a ship on cables. They were Rico's 10, 11, and 12. Each held a rifle at its side, but they didn't fire their weapons, not yet. Their orders were to retrieve the target unharmed if possible. Our robot's survival instincts blared like sirens in her head, and she burst away from the Ricos. She sprinted down the empty street and turned onto another empty street. All the streets seemed to be empty, but they wouldn't be empty for long. More and more big, bulky robots came zipping down to join the chase. The Ricos moved like machines. Their target moved like an animal. The wild robot stayed low, gliding across the streets, darting around buildings, and vanishing into the shadows. Her computer brain brought thought back to those games of wild hide and seek she had played on the farm. But this was no game. Roz never should have gone into that alley. She was halfway through it when the Ricos appeared at both ends. There was only one direction to go. Using all the strength in her legs, our robot launched herself high in the air, and she clamped onto the side of a building. Frightened faces peered out from a window, but Roz didn't want to frighten anyone. She just wanted to go home. The robot launched herself up and across the alley and clamped onto the opposite building. Back and forth she went, leaping between the buildings, climbing higher and higher until she landed on a flat, lofty rooftop. The sky was filled with white airships. All at once, the ships turned toward Roz. Their engines buzzed. This is her jumping across them, right? She must be getting a run from building to building. They closed in on the robot. But then came a strange swishing noise. Pigeons, hundreds of them, thousands of them, wave upon wave of pigeons streamed up from the streets and swarmed around the aircraft. Strutter had rallied her friends from every corner of the city. They had always hated airships, buzzing loudly, crowding the skies, forcing the birds to fly low. And now a city's worth of pigeons were finally unleashing their anger, I should say. As you'd expect, the airship fought back. Blazing beams of light flickered across the skyline and left charred feathers floating in the breeze. But the pigeons didn't retreat. They tightened around the ships, distracting them, confusing them. There was a deafening screech. Little bodies fell, and a ship spiraled out of sight, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Roz watched in horror as more pigeons and ships went down. She hollered for the birds to fly away, but they were lost in a fighting frenzy. Heavy feet thumped on the roof. Rosum Unit 7134, do not move. Roz didn't look. She just ran from the voice, leaped to the next rooftop, and kept on running. That's where our picture comes from. She's leaping from roof to roof. Our robot leaped up to a higher rooftop and then down to a lower one. Up and down she went, leaping from building to building, footsteps thundering behind her, but still the Ricos did not fire their rifles. Mama, I'm here! Bright Bill swooped alongside his mother as she ran. What should we do? Bright Bill, you must fly away to safety, hollered Roz. It's too dangerous up here. And then in a softer voice, the robot said, I cannot escape. No, Mama, you've come too far. Do not give up now. But Roz was finished running. She slowed and stopped at the edge of the rooftop. The goose fluttered into her arms, and our friends held each other close. You have been such a good son, said Roz. You have saved my life so many times, but now you must save yourself and go on without me. Will I see you again? Said Bright Bill, wiping his eyes. I do not think so, said Roz. They still had so much to say to each other. That simply wasn't enough time, so they said the only words that really mattered. I love you, Mama. I love you, son. Airships circled above. Ricos dropped onto rooftops. Rifles pointed at our robot. A voice boomed, Rosum Unit 7134, do not move. But Roz did move. She heaved her son toward the sky so that he could fly to safety, and in that instant a trigger was pulled. A blazing beam of light flashed onto our robot's leg. Damage sensors flared as the leg turned bright orange and melted away. Poor Roz tried to keep her balance, but she was already toppling backward off the roof. She seemed to hang in the air, sparkling in the sunlight, and then she fell, down, down, down to the street below. As Roz was falling, she took one last look at Bright Bill soaring in the sky above. She watched him get smaller and smaller, and then everything went dark. I guess it did. Chapter 79 is called The Designer. Roz awoke slowly. She was surprised to be waking up at all. The fall from that building should have destroyed her, and yet here she was. But where was she? Everything was dark and silent. Was this where robots go when they die? No, as her systems activated, the real world came into focus. She saw white walls and floors, and she heard the hum of machinery in the background. Roz was somewhere inside the robot factory where she had been made. A pile of robot parts lay on the floor. The parts were smashed and mangled. It took a moment for Roz to realize she was looking down at her own broken body. It took another moment for her to realize she was now nothing more than a robotic head. Her head was sitting atop an electronic box that powered her computer brain. Roz still had her thoughts and her voice, but without a body she couldn't move, so she sat there, completely helpless, and waited for the makers to appear. The makers did not appear. Instead, Roz heard soft footsteps, and an old woman appeared. She was elegant, with white hair and red lipstick and black clothing. Here she is, right? Flowery perfume wafted behind her. Every detail about the woman was neat and precise, except for her fingers, which were smudged with dark grease. Welcome back, Roz, said the woman, wiping her hands on a rag. I wasn't sure I'd get your computer brain working again. You took quite a spill out there. How do you feel? Roz just stared. You don't have to pretend anymore, said the woman. I know you're not a normal robot. Everyone knows. You made that perfectly clear when you led the Ricos on that wild chase through the city. Roz remained silent. I watched the video of the chase. I don't know how you got those pigeons to attack our airships, but I'm more interested in the goose. You seem to be speaking with it. Can you explain this to me? The goose is my son, said Roz at last. Is that so? The woman arched an eyebrow. Roz, I repaired your computer brain so I could talk with you. I want to know how you came to be this way. So let's talk. I'll begin by introducing myself. My name is Dr. Malavo. Malavo? Malavo, I'll say. A long time ago, I fell in love with computers and robots, and I created a company called Tech Lab Industries. Since then, millions of robots have been produced right here in this factory, and I've designed every last one of them. Dr. Malavo leaned forward. Roz, I designed you. Let's stop here for this recording session. So, can't wait to see how their conversation goes. But until we read again, here comes some kisses. I love you all. Both. Everybody in the DiBiasio family.